The woman stood in front of the glass, admiring the heavy rain. Suddenly, she noticed what appeared to be a figure on the window across from hers. She squinted in confusion, and to her shock, there was a man staring intently at her. Just as fear began to rise within her, her husband called her name. She brushed it off, thinking it was just her eyes playing tricks on her due to tiredness, and went back to bed to sleep. The next day, while sitting on the sofa and watching TV, the woman was startled by a terrifying news report. There had been a murder in the building across from hers. The victim was a young woman. This brought back the memory of the man who had been watching her from the window the night before. She immediately told her husband about it, but when he checked, there was nothing across the street. He reassured her that it was probably just a coincidence. The woman didn't want to worry her husband further, so she said no more, though the incident had left a lingering shadow in her mind. As she walked down the street, she couldn't shake the feeling that someone was following her. She stopped and looked around, but it was just a passerby. Was she overthinking things? To calm herself, she decided to go to the cinema, but as soon as she sat down, a man walked in and sat behind her. Her sixth sense immediately told her that this man was following her. She was terrified. Slowly, she turned her head, hoping to see his face, but instead, she saw his shoes. At that moment, the man leaned forward, and the woman was consumed by an overwhelming sense of dread. She couldn't take it anymore and bolted from her seat, deciding it was better to feel paranoid than to regret doing nothing. After leaving the cinema, she went to a nearby supermarket. As she was about to pick something, she noticed a man looking in her direction. Thinking he was just another stranger, she turned to leave. But as she walked away, she saw that the man was following her. Cautiously, she turned her head and saw the man's shoes. Those same shoes from the cinema. Fear gripped her heart. She was sure now the man was stalking her. Without wasting another moment, she hurried out of the store. But as she hurried past the aisles, she accidentally knocked over a glass bottle. The man heard the noise and looked up toward her, panicking. The woman quickly ducked into a nearby fire escape. She crouched by the window, peeking out, and sure enough, the man had followed her. Just as she was unsure of what to do next, a supermarket worker called out to her. The worker told her there was an exit at the side. The woman rushed toward the back exit in a hurry. Once home, she told her husband in no uncertain terms that she had been followed. He was incredulous, but after hearing her out, he decided to take her to the supermarket to check the security footage. They watched the footage, and sure enough, when the woman hid in the fire escape, the man was watching her from outside. But her husband suggested he might just have been looking in that direction by chance. Unconvinced, the woman snapped a photo of the man on her phone. Later that evening, her husband had to stay late at work, leaving the woman alone at home. The events from earlier in the day made it impossible for her to sleep. Terrified, she called her husband, asking if he could come back early, but he told her he couldn't. After hanging up, the woman walked to the window. She wanted to see if the man was still out there, watching her. To her relief, the window across from hers was shut tight. Just as she was about to breathe a sigh of relief, there was a sudden knock at her door.